In a place broken by disease, addictions, and deep-rooted political unrest, how was I going to make a difference? What could I accomplish in just 10 days? Going to Namibia was never a choice for me. The opportunity flashed before me, quite literally. I was watching the slideshow before church started and saw an invitation for volunteers with a teaching background to travel to Africa. It was one of those moments in life when there was no second guessing. I turned to my husband and asked him if he would mind if I missed our first wedding anniversary. Just like much of Africa, Namibia has been greatly affected by HIV and AIDS, alcoholism, and political unrest, a lethal combination. The country's history tells a story of a long struggle for independence, reaching that goal only 20 years ago. This former South African territory still lives with remnants of apartheid, which, as a white person, I felt in my bones as I walked through the dirt roads of the shack-filled villages. A small village outside of the capital Windhoek is no exception to this devastation. Its villagers have been pushed further and further away from the capital city by a white government to finally call their place Katutura, which means the place where we do not want to live. So what on earth was I going to accomplish in 10 days? I knew I would be working at a center for orphaned and vulnerable children. I was going to do some teaching and mentoring to the women and girls of the community. I wanted to use my gifts to be a light to the people of Namibia. I remember my reaction as we walked into Family of Hope Services, the Children's Center. Overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by humbleness, empathy, and the smell. As I sat down, I was surrounded by dust-covered children who wanted to touch my hair and skin because it was so different from their own. At that moment, I knew that no goals, training, or anthropology courses could have prepared me for what was going to happen on this trip. At the center, I taught a kindergarten class filled with children who spoke 7 different tribal languages. I struggled to understand them, let alone teach them anything. I felt like a complete mess. But I learned to connect with the joy in their eyes as they tugged at my pants saying, "Teacher, teacher!" I remember choking back tears as I watched the community volunteers mix up a trash can full of Tang, a nutrient supplement for the children to have during snack time. I acted out Bible stories and sang and danced with the children. My heart melted as I watched the children put on the clothes that we had brought with us from home. I met with the caregivers of FHS, women from the community who volunteered to patrol the village, looking after the children who were served at the center. I was asked to give them support and mentor them. As they voiced their frustrations and I waited for a translator, I remember thinking, what on earth can I mentor these women about? I encouraged them and praised them for the amazing work they were doing, but I couldn't help but wonder who was being mentored. I had the opportunity to go on a home visit with one of the children, Esau, from the center. Accompanied by one of the caregivers, I walked through the dusty paths of Katutura in between the aluminum shacks. I've never felt so unsettled. I was definitely a main attraction as I walked to Esau's home, but I couldn't tell if that was good or bad. One child pointed and called out a word in his native language. I asked Abilene what that meant, and she said, "White thing." She told me that white people don't usually go into Katutura. On the next path, I was bombarded by villagers who were asking for money and speaking to me in Afrikaans, believing me to be German. I remember the joy in Esau's face as he gave me a tour of his home, a one-room shack with bare aluminum walls. I was overwhelmed by his pride to show me a house that, by American standards, was scrap metal, but it was perfect to him. I realized that in many ways that these corrugated walls held more value than anything I could ever aspire to own in America. The idea that he could have so much pride in something seemingly worthless forced me to reevaluate what things I thought were most important. The rawness of this moment is something I always want to keep with me. I set out for this trip with a sense of responsibility to make a difference in the lives of the people I met in Namibia. I wasn't expecting to receive more than I could ever give. From my short time in Namibia, I learned that my life is not about accomplishments. It's about building relationships. That being humbled is necessary. But maybe, most importantly, that instead of finding my security in structure and schedules, that I can find comfort in God's unpredictability.